They say the city doesn't have a heart. They say it's a concrete machine that grinds people into dust and spits them out into the gutters. For 5 years, I believed them. I was the dust. I was the guy you walked past without a second glance. The errand boy with a frayed collar and a hollow stomach. But tonight, I'm standing in a penthouse that costs more than my father earned in his entire lifetime. Down there, in the rain, is Marcus, the man who tried to bury me. He's looking up at this window, shivering, begging for a meeting he will never get. People ask me how I did it. How a broke kid from the sticks became the executive vice president of the largest venture firm in the country. They think it was luck? They think it was a miracle? It wasn't. It started with a choice. A choice I made in a freezing storm drain when I had exactly $4 in my pocket and a heart full of grief. I didn't just save a life that night. I saved my own. My name is Will. In the summer of 2024, I moved to the city with a degree in my hand and a mountain of expectations on my shoulders. Back home, my parents were struggling. My dad's lungs were failing after 30 years in the mines, and the bills were suffocating them. I promised I'd be their savior. But the city has a way of humbling you. I landed a job at Apex Solutions, a cutthroat tech sales firm. I wasn't an executive. I was a junior lead generator. That's a fancy word for a human shield. I took the heat when things went wrong and got zero credit when they went right. My best friend at the office was Marcus. We shared a cramped, moldy basement apartment to save money. Marcus was charming, loud, and ambitious. I thought we were a team. I'd stay up until 2 a.m. refining sales data, and Marcus would bring me coffee, telling me, "Don't worry, Will. Once we hit the big leagues, we're moving out of this rat hole together." I believed him. I didn't realize he wasn't looking for a teammate. He was looking for a ladder. It was October. A 100-year flood turned the streets into rivers. I was biking home after a 14-hour shift because I couldn't afford the surged Uber prices. My hands were numb. My bike chain snapped right next to a massive construction site on 5th and Main. That's when I heard it, a high-pitched, desperate whimpering. I followed the sound to a flooded trench. Beneath a rusted I-beam, half submerged in freezing mud, were 2 tiny puppies. They couldn't have been more than 3 days old. Their mother was lying nearby, cold, gone. I didn't think. I waded into the waist-deep water. The current was pulling at my legs, trying to drag me into the sewer line. I reached under the beam, my fingernails tearing against the metal, and scooped them up. I tucked them inside my jacket, against my skin. When I got home, I was shaking so hard I could barely unlock the door. I spent my last $20 on a heating pad and a bottle of puppy formula from a 24-hour pharmacy. I stayed up all night. One puppy, the smaller one, was fading. I held him to my chest, whispering, "Please, just breathe. If you fight, I'll fight." But at 4:30 a.m., he went still. I sat on that basement floor and cried. Not just for the dog, but for me. I felt like a failure. I couldn't save my dad, I couldn't save this pup, and I couldn't save myself from this life. But then I felt a tiny tug on my shirt. The second puppy, the runt, was crawling toward me. He let out a defiant little bark. His eyes weren't even open, but he was fighting. I named him Bane, because from that moment on, I decided we were going to be the bane of everyone who doubted us. 2 weeks later, everything changed. I had spent months developing a dynamic lead algorithm, a piece of code that could predict market shifts before they happened. It was my ticket out. I showed the final draft to Marcus. "Will, this is genius," Marcus said, his eyes gleaming. "The CEO needs to see this. Let me polish the presentation deck for you tonight. We'll present it together Monday." Monday morning came. I walked into the office, ready for my life to change. But I wasn't invited to the boardroom. Marcus was already inside. Through the glass, I saw him pointing at my slides, my code, and my research. The CEO was beaming, shaking Marcus's hand. I charged in. "That's my work. Marcus, what are you doing?" Marcus looked at me with cold, fake pity. "Will, I know you're stressed about your dad, but trying to claim my project as your own? That's low, man." The CEO looked at me with disgust. "Will, Marcus warned me you might have a mental break. He also showed me the logs. You tried to upload this proprietary data to a private server last night. That's corporate espionage." Marcus had framed me. He had used my login to leak the data to a fake account he created. I was fired on the spot. No severance. No references. And because of the theft charge, I was blacklisted from every tech firm in the city. I went home to find my bags on the sidewalk. Marcus had changed the locks. I was standing in the rain again. No job, no home, just a 3-month-old puppy in a cardboard box. The next 6 months were a blur of humiliation. I lived in a shelter for 3 weeks until I found a job no one wanted, night security, at the Onyx Marina. It was a graveyard for the ultra-wealthy's yachts. It was cold, lonely, and paid pennies. But they let me keep Bane in the guard shack. Bane wasn't a runt anymore. He was a powerhouse, loyal, sharp, and strangely intuitive. He knew I was hurting. He'd rest his head on my knee during the long 12-hour shifts while I studied finance books by flashlight. I told my parents I was consulting. I sent them every spare cent, eating nothing but rice and beans. One Tuesday, around 3 a.m., a massive storm rolled in, reminiscent of the night I found Bane. The wind was howling, snapping the moorings of the multi-million-dollar boats. Suddenly, Bane stood up, his hackles raised. He didn't bark. He let out a low, vibrating growl and bolted toward the end of Pier 7. "Bane, get back here!" I yelled, chasing him into the gale. He stopped at the edge of the SS Sovereign, a 150-foot superyacht. He began frantically scratching at the boarding ramp. I climbed aboard, thinking it was a burglar. Instead, I found a man. He was sprawled on the mahogany deck, clutching his chest. His face was blue. This was Julian Vane, a man whose net worth had its own zip code. He was having a massive cardiac event. Because of my father's illness, I had taken advanced first aid and CPR classes. I knew exactly what to do. I cleared his airway, started compressions, and used the yacht's radio to call a mayday. Bane stayed by the man's side, whining softly, nudging his hand to keep him conscious. By the time the paramedics arrived, Julian was stable. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, he grabbed my sleeve. His voice was a whisper. The dog. He knew. "Who are you?" "Just the help, sir," I said. 2 days later, a woman in a suit worth more than my life arrived at the gate. Elena, the chief of staff for Vane Holdings. "Mr. Vane wants to see you," she said, "and he wants to see the dog." I walked into Julian's hospital suite expecting a check for $500 and a thank you. Instead, Julian was sitting up, surrounded by monitors. "I did some digging, Will," Julian said, tossing a folder on the bed. "You have a degree in systems architecture. You were the top of your class. So why are you guarding my boat at 3 a.m.? I told him everything. The algorithm, Marcus, the betrayal, the blacklist. Julian leaned back. "I know the CEO of Apex Solutions. He's a shark, but I'm the megalodon. I don't like thieves, Will, and I owe my life to a dog who apparently has better instincts than my entire security team." Then came the words that stopped my heart. "I'm not giving you a reward, Will. I'm giving you a weapon. I'm opening a new venture arm, Vane Tech Capital. I need an EVP who knows what it's like to be in the dirt. Someone who won't sell their soul for a quick buck. The salary is $1.2 million plus performance bonuses. But there's a catch." I held my breath. "What's the catch?" Julian smiled. "The dog comes to work every day. He's the new head of corporate culture." The next year was a whirlwind. I worked 100-hour weeks, but this time it was for me. I launched the algorithm under Vane Tech. It didn't just work, it dominated. We were making moves that left the industry reeling. I bought a home, a quiet, sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city with 5 acres of fenced-in grass for Bane. I flew my parents out on a private medical jet. When my dad saw the house, he cried. He tried to thank me, but I just pointed at Bane. "Thank him, Dad. He's the one who didn't let me quit." But there was still one piece of unfinished business. Marcus. Marcus had used my stolen algorithm to propel Apex Solutions to a massive IPO. He was the golden boy of tech. But he didn't realize that my algorithm had a flaw I hadn't finished fixing before he stole it. It was a decay bug. After 18 months of heavy use, the data would begin to hallucinate. And 18 months was exactly where we were. I waited. I watched as Apex's stock began to wobble. Investors were panicking. Marcus was desperate. He didn't know how to fix the code because he didn't write it. Julian Vane called a meeting. He wanted to buy out a struggling competitor for pennies on the dollar. That competitor was Apex Solutions. The boardroom was silent. The Apex CEO and Marcus were sitting there waiting for the Vane representative to save them from bankruptcy. The doors swung open. I walked in. I wasn't the errand boy anymore. I was the man holding their entire future in a manila envelope. Bane walked at my side, his claws clicking on the marble floor, the only sound in the room. Marcus stood up, his face turning a ghostly shade of gray. "Will? What are you doing here?" I sat at the head of the table. I didn't look angry. I looked bored. I'm here to sign the acquisition papers, I said. Vane Tech is buying Apex. For 10% of its valuation. It's a distress price. The CEO sputtered. That's insulting. We built this on the most advanced algorithm in the world. No, I said, leaning forward. You built this on a lie. Marcus stole that code from my desk 2 years ago. The problem is, Marcus isn't smart enough to know that the logic gate decays after 1,000,000 cycles. Your data is trash. Your company is worth nothing. I tossed a flash drive on the table. That's the fix. I wrote it while I was guarding a marina at 3 a.m. I'll give it to you. The moment Marcus is escorted out of this building by security. And Marcus? Don't bother looking for a job in this hemisphere. I own the blacklist now. Marcus tried to lung at me, screaming that I had trapped him. Bane didn't bite. He just stepped in front of me and let out a growl that shook the glass windows. Marcus backed away, shaking. He was let out in handcuffs for corporate fraud. Evidence Julian's team had been gathering for months. They say the city doesn't have a heart, and maybe it doesn't, but it has a memory. I'm living the life I used to dream about when I was shivering in that basement. My parents are healthy, my career is soaring, and I found someone, Sarah, the vet who helped me raise Bane, who loves me for the man I was when I had nothing. Every morning, I look at Bane. He's older now, a bit gray around the muzzle, but he still looks at me with those same eyes from the storm drain. People give me the credit. They call me a self-made mogul. But as I sit here on this porch, watching my dad laugh for the first time in years, I know the truth. I didn't build this empire. A runt did.